Alright, so welcome back to another video. Today we've got something a little bit different. We are going to be discussing the current state of DBD. Now this one is going to be a little bit different to the videos that I usually upload on this channel. For this one, I'm not going to have a script or anything like that. I'm just going to be, talking about the current state of the game. So this one's going to be more discussion based. You guys can obviously let me know your thoughts in the comments down below as well. But usually when people talk about the current state of the game, they're talking about balancing, they're talking about killer changes, potential buffs, nerfs. We're not going to be discussing anything about that. Instead, we're going to be discussing the just insane amount of content that we get. Now, this isn't going to be me complaining because obviously for me as a content creator, the more content, the better. The more content that they add to the game is, more content for me to make videos on, and ultimately more fun to be had as well as someone who plays DBD as a fan first and foremost. And obviously I do have thousands of hours in the game. I do love the game. So for me personally, more content is a good thing, but I can definitely see the other side of it for people that don't play as much, and especially for newer players coming to the game. Just the sheer amount of content that we get, like even for me, can be overwhelming at times. Say you're just working a normal job, you're doing something else, you're not a content creator. Maybe you play a few other games, maybe you play a bit of Call of Duty, a bit of Overwatch, maybe a bit of Fortnite as well. Then you also enjoy DBD. Now, it's going to be difficult to kind of keep up with everything just because of the sheer amount of content. Also, this isn't anything specific to DBD necessarily. This is just, modern gaming in general. But I just want to go over some of the recent things that we've had. So August 27th, we got the Castlevania chapter. So that, that's only going back maybe 2.5 weeks or so. And before that, we did have a PTB for it. Usually with the PTB, there's some changes. The whole purpose of the PTB is for people to test it out. Obviously, it is only available to players on Steam, but people can test it out so the devs can kind of, see if there's any bugs, any glitches, any things that need balancing. Maybe the new killer that gets released is too overpowered, or maybe he's too weak, or maybe there's a new perk that they buffed and it's a little bit too strong. So that is the whole purpose of a PTB. The PTB is mainly to test things out, which is great. But usually they do make changes from the PTB. So obviously we had the Castlevania PTB, and then we obviously had the actual Castlevania chapter itself fully released on the main game on August 27th. And it's also worth noting as well, like for example, the Castlevania chapter, they did also make changes to a bunch of perks, like for example, Chemical Trap and Blast Mine for the survivor side. Also a few killer ones as well. And I think maybe even some killers got changed. So that's another thing. They don't only address balancing in the mid-chapter updates, they also address balancing in, the chapters and the paragraphs. So on top of all the new content, the new perks, the new killer, potentially new map, wasn't the case for Castlevania, we didn't get a map, but potentially a new map as well. You also have the perk changes to take into consideration. So after the Castlevania release, obviously new killer and everything, new perks, new survivors, new skins as well. That's another thing. I'm not really going to go into skins because skins isn't really content, it's just something cosmetic, so that's not something you really need to keep up with. Same with codes, blood point codes, charms, the tomes, the rifts, stuff that you can unlock. While they are content, they don't really change gameplay. I mean, I guess you could say the Rift does, people are doing different challenges, but we're mainly going to be focusing on new content added to the game, whether that's, killers, survivors, perks, or perk changes as well. We'll discuss that, and also game modes, which brings me on to the next thing. So the Lights Out game mode came out on the 12th of this month of September. So again, only 2 or 3 weeks after Castlevania. So straight after that, we've got this new game mode coming out, which again, for me, for content is great. It's more content. It's, it's more stuff to play. But I want to hear from you guys. You guys, obviously, if you don't play DBD as your job, as 99.9% of people that play DBD, I'm sure they don't. Most people just play it for fun. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys think. Is it a bit overwhelming? Because like I said, even for me, at times it can be overwhelming, and that's someone with thousands of hours in the game, plays it all the time, do DBD content as my job. So even though Lights Out has only just released as well, we also have a PTB announced for, I believe, Tuesday. So if you guys are watching this when it releases on the Monday, I believe it's coming out tomorrow. And they've also got a list of a bunch of changes that they're doing. They're bringing back the finishing Mori, which is a change that they were going to implement 2 years ago, and they ended up scrapping the idea, but now they're bringing it back, 2 years later, or it might even be slightly over 2 years, around 2 years though. But yeah, I think the finishing Mori could be a good change, but again, so close to the game modes. Also, another thing to mention, Chaos Shuffle is also coming out at the end of this month. So like, we have just had so much content lately. Like I said, this is not me complaining, I'm just discussing it. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys think, and let me know if it is overwhelming. Also, another thing I wanted to discuss is Skull Merchant. Now, I believe Skull Merchant has been changed 3 times so far. That could be up to 6 as well, if you include the PTBs in between, if they made any changes from the PTBs, which they likely did for at least, 1 or 2 of them, if not all of them. And she's also due to be getting another change in the upcoming PTB. Whether that's, I think it's a nerf, but I'm not entirely sure. As I said before, we also don't know how the PTB changes will be when it releases on the main game, whether they make any tweaks or just release it as it was in the PTB. Skull Merchant was released in early 2023, so only around for 18 months or so. So yeah, that is just crazy how, you know, a killer that has only been around for 18 months has seen so many changes. I guess for good reason, but you know, the fact that they just keep on changing it, again, it's just another example of the just sheer amount of content and how overwhelming it can be. You know, you've got used to how the killer plays, then they change it, and then, you know, then they change it again, and then you just start to get used to that, and then they change it again, and it's just like, when does it end, you know? And it never ends. But in a way, like I said, it is a good thing that they keep reworking it, trying to get a balanced and, you know, fun to play against. But just another example, like I said, just another example of something that has been changed several times in a short period of time. Now, there is a perk I wanted to discuss. Quick Gambit is getting a pretty big buff on the PTB. We're not sure how it will release on the main game. As I said earlier, the PTB is mainly to test out changes, so you know, if they've made it too strong, they will slightly nerf it from the PTB. But when you're now chased, you see the auras of other survivors. It also has a 60-second cooldown upon losing a health state, and it reduces the repair speed bonus to 5%, whereas beforehand it was 8%. But the main part of the perk, and the reason it's a huge buff, is repair speed bonus is no longer a limited range, whereas beforehand it would only apply to generators being worked on within 36 meters. Now, 36 meters is a pretty large radius, but you know, the fact that it now just works across the board, well, that's what it seems like anyway. It seems like it's just going to work across the board with all gens that are being worked on. So you know, this could be a really good perk if you're trying to get a 5-gen chase. It is only 5%, so it's not a huge difference, but if you can keep that health state and stay healthy and have a long chase, get a killer who's going to commit it's going to make a pretty big difference. But you know, right now, who knows? Maybe it's not a huge buff. We don't really know. We've not tested it out. We're not going to fully know until it actually releases. On paper, it does seem pretty good. But yeah, that's not the point. My point is, they changed this perk earlier on in the year, so my point isn't how strong the perk is or whatever. I think even though it's strong, it probably won't be meta, but that's besides the point. Earlier on this year, they did already change Quick Gambit. Now, Quick Gambit, when it first released a couple of years back, it just increased the repair speed of survivors within that range by 8% for 24 meters. Then they buffed it and it went to 36 meters, and now they're buffing it again. Now, the thing is, for someone who doesn't really play a lot, it's going to get really confusing, especially with all these different perks being changed. Just think of how many perks there are in the game now. There's hundreds and hundreds of perks, which is a good thing in a way, but also there's almost too much content now. Like I said, for me, it's a good thing. I think it is a good thing in a way, but it could definitely be overwhelming for people that, you know, playing multiple games, got a lot of other stuff going on. For me, obviously, I put a lot of time into DBD, so I definitely do appreciate the fact that we're getting a lot of content, but let me know what you guys think. I mean, is it overwhelming? I mean, I know even for me, it can be overwhelming. Even for me, I can get confused at times with perks. Something will happen in the game, and like maybe I'll think it's a different perk than what it actually is, because I'm just confused with how many perks that we have in the game now, and also, like I said, all the changes. So like, you know, sometimes they'll buff a perk and then they'll revert the change a little bit later on, and then it's like you've just gotten used to the buff and then now it's back to how it was. For example, a perk like that would be DS. Now, maybe this is a bad example because it doesn't do anything significantly different, but they nerfed it to a 3-second stun, then they buffed it somewhat recently to a 5-second stun, and then even more recently they nerfed it back to 4 seconds again. And also, I think in between they changed it on PTBs as well. So, you know, sometimes for me, I'll get used to the way something is on a PTB, but then it gets changed on the main game, which again is good for me for the content, but it can definitely get confusing. So I'm just checking here, and it does say there's currently 270 perks featured in Dead by Daylight. Now, when you take that into consideration and you're getting usually an average of 6 new perks with every chapter, sometimes it can be slightly more, sometimes it can be slightly less. If it is like a paragraph chapter where we only get a survivor or a killer, in that case it will just be 3. Sometimes we get a killer and 2 survivors, in that case it would be 9, but on average 6 perks for every chapter, 3 survivor, 3 killer. I do think they made it better with the prestige system. I don't know if any of you guys remember the old prestige system, but it would work in a way where you would have to unlock each perk on each different survivor, which is still the case unless you prestige them. If you take them to P3, you that unlocks each of their teachables for every survivor or every killer. So I definitely think that was a really good change that they did, but still, just the sheer amount of content that we get in, like I said, even for me, someone who has so many hours, definitely getting pretty confusing and pretty overwhelming, I think. But it's a good problem to have. For me personally, it's a good problem to have, you know, having too much content. I'd certainly rather have too much content than not enough content. You know, the game would die that way. So obviously it is a good thing, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Is it a little bit overwhelming? Do you think they should slow down a little bit, or do you think maybe they should speed it up, give us even more content? but yeah, I obviously I would like to see more killers and stuff. The main thing I want to see is more licenses. I want to see more licenses added to the game. You know, recently we had Castlevania, which is great. I want to see a Friday the 13th chapter, Pennywise, stuff like that. I have got a video on the channel going over chapters that they should add to DBD. But yeah, just a bit of a different one this video. This one's gonna, let me know if you want to see more of this type of video as well, without a script, me just talking about, you know, about random stuff in the world of DBD. Also, another thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, I forgot, the new Lights Out game mode. It's actually kind of an old game mode that was out earlier on in the year. I think maybe around April time, could be wrong. I've not checked. That's just off the top of my head. Earlier on this year though, we did get it, so they brought it back this time with a twist. You've now got candelabras to light up stuff around you and see nearby gens, which also means the killer can kind of see you a little bit more easily, can kind of see where you are if you are holding it, and you can also put the candles on the gen. But yeah, like I said, we'll have Chaos Shuffle coming out at the end of the month. In between that, we've got a PTB, and then the PTB usually comes out between 2 or 3 weeks later. So yeah, we'll have that PTB, then we'll have Chaos Shuffle, then we'll have the new update. And then I'm sure it won't be long after that we'll get a completely new chapter. But you know, I really want to hear from you guys. Like I said, for me, it's a good problem to have. I'm really grateful that we've got this amount of content, even though it can be overwhelming at times. But I'm just really curious about, you know, the average DBD player. Is it too much? Is there, you know, times you're playing the game where there's a perk that's being used, you're not sure what it is. You know, maybe sometimes you could even think someone is hacking. They've used a perk that you're not sure exists, or a perk that you're not sure got changed. I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, let me know, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this one. Like I said, let me know if you would like to see more sort of without a script, just discussion-based videos, and I will see you all in the next one.